Welcome to the Run from the Norm podcast, where we dive into the profound impact of individuality, self-expression, and authenticity within the running community. I'm your host, Jake Reynolds, and today I'm joined by my good friend, successful real estate agent, accomplished ultra runner, and all-around outdoor enthusiast, Graham MacKenzie. Join us as we explore not only the physical and mental benefits that come from a lifetime of seeking adventure and self-understanding, but also the unique journey of an individual who breaks free from the ordinary and truly runs from the norm.
People believe in you. You just need to borrow their belief in you long enough so that you believe in yourself.
Graham MacKenzie, thanks for taking the time to chat with me here. And I really want to just start out with what this thing's all about. And we talked a little bit about on our run earlier before we're doing this, authenticity.
Yeah.
We've talked about it at great length over the years, and I'm kind of curious, what does authenticity mean to you, and how do you incorporate authenticity in your day-to-day?
That's a great question, and thanks for having me on.
Yeah,
this is awesome.
Thank you for doing this.
It's funny, as we talked about on the run, that word has popped up quite often recently, right? I was talking with someone at work and authenticity and where it's gone. I think to me, authenticity, it means being real, right? Saying what's on your mind in as kind a way as possible, right? Like sometimes you do have to filter your thoughts, but being real with people and respecting people enough to be real. And it's so tough right now that with social media and the platforms out there, and look at me, everyone's, life is a highlight, right? And to actually tell it like it is or be open with someone can be tough. So it's that, hey, this is what I'm thinking. This is what's on my mind. Taking responsibility for your mistakes, admitting when you're wrong, just laying it all out there.
So how do you do that? Because kind of to your point, the thing online right now is brand yourself, as everything is a personal brand. And I was watching something, might have even been earlier today, and they're talking about the first $1 trillion company will be a personal brand company rather than a traditional corporation.
Right.
So with that in mind, and considering that we're making an effort to be social influencers of sorts with the things that we do, so how do you maintain that line between still promoting the things that are important to you and pushing that authenticity, but still filtering yourself in a way that you don't overstep?
Well, I think
you don't offend.
Yeah, I think it comes from having respect for people, right? And really wanting what's best for them. And so there's always the textbook answer that everybody wants, and then there's the real answer. And being open to saying, hey, you know what? This is a mistake I've made, and so be it, right? And what I've learned from it. The way it shows up for me a lot of times is there's someone having in my life that I, respect and care about, and they're doing dumb stuff. Pull them aside and say, hey, man, you're screwing up here. Do something. I love you. Let's fix this. I'm here for you. But if you're acting like a victim a year from now, then we got to separate ways, right? And I think to me, that's what it is.
And what drives that? Because again, on our run, we were talking about in your professional career, you're a real estate agent, but you spend a lot of your time coaching new agents.
Yeah.
So where did the desire come not only to work with others, but where did it come from within you that drove you to deep dive into this?
For me, it was looking back over my life and realizing that, there were some mistakes I made. Nothing tragic, nothing, horrible, just things that had I known or learned earlier in life could have set me up for things later in life. And so particularly with the 20-year-olds and the people coming up, just wanting them not to make the same mistakes that I made, and knowing that in this world, we think that everybody's got their crap together. Like it appears that way, and we don't. And one of the things I've learned over the years is that you pull it back the curtain on anybody's life, they've got a challenge, they've got a struggle, they've got some demon in their closet, right? And wanting, for me, these youngsters, it's not even youngsters, anybody, to realize that, hey, none of us is perfect. You know, people believe in you. You just need to borrow their belief in you long enough so that you believe in yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the things that I think. But it's also, we have this tendency, it seems like to me, to almost celebrate victimhood. I don't know if you would call it that, but oh, my life's horrible. This sucks. That sucks. Everybody hates me. And at some point, it's like, what part are you playing? And for me, that calling people out on that and just, or at least having the conversations, like, what part did you play in that, is important, right? They might hate me for it, or they might think I'm an ass for it. But at the end of the day, I don't want anyone to ever doubt where they stand with me.
Sure.
I'm either your friend or I'm not your friend, or I think you're an asshole, and if you are, it's like, good, like, work on it, right?
Which, I guess comes back to the whole thing of authenticity is, how do you live your life in a way that you can still be true to who you are and again, without offending somebody. I don't want to say call somebody out, but it kind of goes back to almost the social media thing is it's almost like everybody's desperate for attention. And some of the ways that people choose to get attention is, we'll say, playing the part of a victim.
Right.
And so say somebody comes, I don't know if you get this when in your coaching side of things, how would you coach somebody through that? If somebody you're trying to work with somebody and a lot of what they're doing is positioning themselves, what you'd say is kind of a victim mentality, how would you coach somebody through that?
A lot of it's questions. I think there's this misconception with the term coaching is it sometimes gets confused with consulting, right?
Mm.
Like if someone comes in.
Can you make the distinction?
Yeah. So someone will come in and say they want to learn something about real estate. A lot of times what they're looking for is consulting, which is tell me what to do, right? Coaching is asking them questions to help them discover for themselves, to make them go inside and start thinking about what's going on. So if someone comes in and says, like right now, the real estate market sucks. Well, does it? Right? And it's like, okay, what has to happen for you to think it doesn't suck? What can you control? Right? And then they start realizing that maybe where they are isn't market-based. It's like, oh, I haven't been putting in the actions. I haven't controlled what I can. I haven't made the contacts, reached out to the people. I haven't built the relationships. Even that, like a lot of times, it's like, well, my friends and family, they won't refer to me. It's like, well, how did you earn that?
Earning the trust,
right?
And building the trust.
Like, did you earn that? I mean, are they right? Should they?
If you're diving into that, do you have a set of questions that you'll normally lean on when to start that discovery process, or does it really depend on the individual?
It really depends on where it's going, right? When in a conversation like what we're doing now, and is your next question is in the answer to your first question, right? So you can talk about, how's your day? Someone says, good. Okay, good. What's good about it? Right? And then they tell you that. And they say, okay, how does that feel? Right? Like you want to, if it's a good thing, you want them to sit in that and really focus on that. If it's a bad thing, they say, you know what? My day's horrible. Okay, tell me more about that. Right? And then there's usually something in there that say, well, you know what? My dog ate my homework or whatever it is. And say, okay, how did that come about? Right? And get them to say, okay, well, do you want to stay focused on that? Or what would have to happen for you to have a good day from here on out?
And then once you go through and you get through that discovery process, do you send them with specific tasks or things that you would ask them to do, or how do they start working through that?
Yeah, I mean, that's the accountability part. There's always got to be like a next step. Okay, so what's the next step? Where do we go from here? Mm-hmm. And it's like, what are you willing to commit to? Right? One of them is, biggest thing is, in coaching, it's rarely about the what or the how. I mean, we all know what we're supposed to do. Health-wise, we're supposed to eat right. We're supposed to exercise, but people just don't do it. And so accountability and getting leverage on someone is important. So it's more about the why.
If you are working with somebody and you find that there's maybe some more personal issues that are influencing their ability to professionally perform,
yep,
how do you address that?
We go down that road. And we figure it out, right? and you have to have enough rapport and permission to go down those roads, right? Like I think that anything in life really comes down to mindset. And so you got to get that straight. And if it's something that obviously needs a professional involved, you talk about that, but you help them discover. But it's amazing once you go down that road and start asking questions, you're like, oh yeah, I know it. They know what they need to do. But I'm not afraid to go there if they need to go there, because if your business grows to the extent that you do. Mm. So your business can't grow if you've got problems in your personal life. If it's a relationship issue or kid issue, I just help them self-discover that maybe there's something that they need to do and take care of. At the same time, we can't let them dwell on that. Right, because the bill collectors keep showing up. Right, you can't tell the bill collectors, my daughter or my son or my wife.
Just give me a little bit of time.
Yeah, give me some time. So it's like, okay, how can we move forward? And the biggest thing is, I'd like to go back to the why, because I think that is the most important thing. Like, why are you doing this? When someone tells me, hey, I want to get into real estate, okay, what's causing you to want to get into real estate, right? And if they tell me, classic example is everyone says they want to make $1 million, right? Or 100,000 or whatever it is.
And everything on the internet tells you real estate, that's where it's at, and do it in 3 easy steps.
Absolutely. And it's simple. It's not easy. You don't ever get out of working in life or suffering, but it's like, what I find is most people want to spend $1 million. They don't want to earn $1 million.
That's a great point.
Right? Yeah. And so it's like, okay, what happens if you don't? And I say, well, can you get by on 500,000? Okay, yeah, I can get, yeah, absolutely. 500,000, awesome. Okay. 250? Yep. 100? Yep. 70? No, I can't. My bills are this. So I know that they're going to make somewhere between 75 and 100,000 next year. Unless they have a compelling reason to make more than that, they're going to make exactly what they need. Yeah. And so part of coaching is leveraging, like, okay, what could you do with that extra money, or what would you do? And if we can get clear on, they're like, well, gosh, this would allow me to buy investment properties or whatever it is. It's the same with health. What happens if you don't get healthy? Mm-hmm. They'll say something. I'll say, what else? What else? Well, the fact of the matter is they're going to die if they don't take care of their health. How are your kids going to feel about that when they grow up fatherless? Right. They're like, oh, I didn't think about that. Well, you should, right? But here's the great thing. What happens when you do take care of your health? A year from now, what happens if you follow through? They're like, man, I have self-esteem. I have all this energy. I can play with my kids. We can do things. My business is going to improve because, I have all this energy. I'm sleeping better, right?
What got you so passionate about health and diet?
Well, so I came at it a different way than most people. I've never been really overweight. I've never really struggled with my weight. I've had a ridiculous sweet tooth, like I should be type 2 diabetic and in the grave and 500 pounds.
What's your favorite candy?
I love the gummy stuff, like PGOs, Swedish fish, jelly beans. Easter's horrible for me because they got all the good sweet tart jelly beans and nerd jelly beans and all this stuff. But
I'm a Sour Patch person.
Yeah,
Sour Patch Kids.
With Swedish
anything
fish.
Sour. Yeah.
You get 2 Sour Patch and 1 Swedish fish. It's the greatest mix.
Oh, see, and I don't even wait for that. I just get a handful and shove them all in my mouth. I'm not even enjoying the specific flavors. It's just one gob of sour.
You should. I came up one year with a Cadbury egg omelet. Easter, you got the Cadbury eggs, you melt them, throw some jelly beans and Peeps in there. So
that'd be awesome. Like my dad. Every morning was an everything omelet. It's right. Whatever was in the kitchen, right. And I'm gonna have to find some chocolate or some Cadbury and throw it in and give it a try.
It's freaking awesome. Well, so when I got into running, the health thing was interesting. My friend, Dr. Cavo, Charlie Cavo, played soccer with him, grew up in high school. When he saw I was running a lot, he was like, you know what, Mac, you need to train your body to burn fat for fuel. Get off the carbs. And I'm like, no way, man.
Okay, so you learned that at an early age. Yeah. Okay, I wasn't sure if this was something that also came later in life.
No, this was later in life.
Running.
No, he was a high school buddy, but this was in 2016, 15? Okay. 15 or 16 is when he brought it up to me. Okay. And his story is interesting. Awesome guy. And he was in the OBGYN and then ended up in the weight loss and metabolic health field because it was really frustrating for him that losing a lot of weight could actually bring fertility back and help heal a lot of things that he was seeing in his patients.
Interesting.
So anyways, he's telling me, hey, Mac, you know what? Get off the carbs, change your life. I'm like, no way. Because for me, pizza 3 or 4 nights a week, pasta, carb loading, a gel every half hour on my runs. You know, I was so addicted to sugar. I didn't realize that time. I thought that's what it was. I was like, no, I can't function. And it took him 2 years to convince me.
Really?
I think it was 16 or 17 that I actually said, all right, Charlie, here's the deal. I'll give you 6 weeks. And for 6 weeks, I went cold turkey. It was brutal, right? The first week was horrible.
And what made you decide to do it?
I just wanted to see if it was true. And then I started reading, you know, and I think that's one of the, I would encourage people to pay attention to the commonalities that happen. That word authenticity we talked about, it's interesting. It's come up quite a few times. So it's like, okay, pay attention, right?
Now, yeah.
And then I think, I mean, keto wasn't really big back then. It was his movie, The Magic Pill, that came out that I actually watched that as well. And I was like, okay.
That was his movie?
It wasn't his movie. His wife, Michelle Cavo, was a practitioner in it. And his practice, pounds medical weight loss. Anyways, so I was like, all right, I'll give it a go. I'm sore all the time, and I'll give it a go. So I did it 6 weeks, and I really tried to prove him wrong. I ate like obscene amounts of fat, protein. When I was hungry, I would kind of, in hindsight, dirty keto, but I ate just lots and lots of fat.
I'll be totally honest, because I remember seeing when you were starting to deep dive into it, and Tiff and I, we would chat about it too, and I was like, you know, is Grandma over there eating like sticks of butter? What,
yeah.
What the hell is he doing here?
Well, yeah.
I don't really understand the full keto thing. I just, you know, the first thing I see is, you know, what you see online is it's, you know, sticks of butter and all the fat and all this stuff. And so he was having a stick of butter for breakfast.
Yeah. So, well, there's some nuance to it, because when, you know, it's not supposed to be a calorie deficit diet, right? I mean, I think we can go down a rabbit hole with calories in, calories out, which does apply to a certain extent. But when you're an ultra runner and you're running, doing 20, 30 mile long runs, you need the calories. I mean, you got to get them. And so it's like you can only eat so many steaks or fatty meats or cheese, and so it's like you gotta get that dense calories in.
So you don't do carbs even on your long runs in either?
No.
Really?
No, in fact, I went on this 6 weeks. It changed my life.
Really?
I lost 31 pounds in 6 weeks that I didn't really know I had to lose. I leaned up, I got ripped. I felt amazing. I felt superhuman. I started PR in races. I set 5 years ago, and I was, I was 50.
Really?
Right?
And,
So
for people that don't know you, how tall are you?
6'2".
And how much do you weigh, would you say, right now?
Right now, I'm 180, but when I go...
I mean, you're lean.
Yeah, and last 2 years haven't been awesome. So, you know, I put on a little bit of the fat, but I was like race weight, I was 162, 163.
Holy smokes.
Yeah.
So when you're eating like that, do you fluctuate through the seasons in? Because when it gets colder, a lot of times people put on more weight. Do you still do that on keto, or is it easier to manage your weight that way?
I think that wintertime, I think there's a lot of biological effects that do happen. I try not to, and I still do, right? Like it's harder to get out and run. And then when you don't run, you know, it's like, okay, you get a little comfort food, stuff like that. I think it's okay and good to slip in and out of ketosis. But the textbook answer, like this, the authenticity, it's like, oh, I never do that. I'm perfect. It's like, no, I'm not. And sugar in any form is bad for you, whether it's high glycemic carbs or oatmeal, whatever it is. It's kind of a toxin. And I'm not saying don't do any of these things. That's up to you. Everything's a personal choice,
practice
right?
Moderation.
But like, if you know something's bad for you, why would you take small doses of poison?
I think that's a hard thing. Is like logically we know these things, but then putting it into practice is such a more complicated thing to do.
Absolutely.
You know, like even the running thing, you know, people that are out of shape, that need to get some movement into their lives, you know these things that you need to be doing. So what do you do? What's the practice for you to make sure that you're incorporating these things and it's not just stuck in your head, but you're taking the action?
Comes down to the why again. Like, what am I doing this for, right? The problem with health is, it's never a problem till it's a problem. And then it's something that you almost can't reverse, right? Like I saw saying the other day, I've got 99 problems and none of them matter if my health is one. And so the damage that's done from our diets and our lifestyle doesn't show up until we're 60 or 70, and it's really too late by then.
So would you say with running, is running something that you do more as a way to control that, or is it something that you do more for the enjoyment of it?
It's the enjoyment of it. I enjoy what running does for me in terms of, yes, I feel better, and it's more about getting out in nature and, you know, and getting away from people. And, you know, I've got kind of that ADHD mind. For me, running is more of a mental thing, and it's the only time that my mind is calm, like completely calm.
Yeah, I
like
agree.
I'll count my steps when I'm running, and it's just like, and I'll look up, and half the time when I see people out there running, you know, it takes me a while to recognize who they are if they're friends, because I'm just in my head.
Yeah.
So, and then also it helps me think, like if I have a problem that I can't really spend the time thinking on or come to a solution on or get resolution on, if I go running, it just,
You find clarity.
it's just like, oh, look at this. And I think my best then.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
No, I'm right there with you. And actually, like with this whole podcast thing, this is kind of my exercise to streamline my thought process, because I struggle with that same thing. Is I'm all over the place doing 1,000 things at once, and that's kind of where running is my magic too. Is it's the only thing I have found that really slows things down enough to where I can actually collect my thoughts into a fairly clear and cohesive way to work through problems.
Right.
To just simplify, to actually push myself to take actions, and rather than just being stuck in analysis paralysis, which I tend to do
Right.
quite a lot.
Right.
But yeah, it sounds like kind of the same thing for you.
How long into a run does it take you to realize like you haven't really thought about anything substantial?
It's a great question. I think it varies run to run. Usually the first mile, I think for everybody sucks. You know, your breathing's ragged. You're trying to find your pace.
Right.
But usually after 2 or 3 miles, I would say I start to settle in.
Yeah.
The thing that's interesting though, when you expand that out to the ultras, is I actually don't settle in until about mile 50 or 60.
Right.
The first 20 or 30, you're kind of in it and having a good time. 30 to 50, 40 to 50, 60, somewhere in there, it sucks.
Right.
And I'm starting to bonk pretty heavy. But then once I start pushing through that and I hit about mile 50 or 60, that's when it's like I really am just locked into present in the moment. Yep. Everything is falling away. I don't have to actively push it out of my head.
Right.
But for the shorter runs, it's tough. I think it's because a lot of times it seems like we're just trying to squeeze them in wherever we can throughout the day, because we're all busy and we're trying to do so many things at one time, because that ADHD brain.
Yep.
And so a lot of times I'll try to squeeze them in on a lunch, and it's hard, because if you only have a short period of time, it's almost like the harder you try, the harder it is to get lost in it.
Yeah. I think that's why people tend towards trail running, because there's an excuse in trail running not to be tied to the clock, and it's you just go run.
Yeah.
Right? The road runners, marathoners, the triathletes, and neither one's right or wrong, but man, they pay attention to pace. And for me, once I found I could run long distances, like I mean, we all can. Like once I kind of learned that and started running, then I wanted to be a race, and then faster, and then every run had a purpose, and it was like, and then all of a sudden I started hating running.
Yeah.
And then when you throw that all out, and it's like, look, if I can get 50 miles in this week or 30 miles in this week, great. I don't care if they're fast or slow. Mm-hmm. Some days I go out intending to do a fast run, and for whatever reason, I'm like walking half of it.
Yeah.
And then other days I go out, which is also why I don't run with others a lot, because I don't know what I'm going to feel that day, right? Mm-hmm. And so like I might go out thinking it's going to be slow and get a little pep in my step and get after it. The other thing about running for me is I tend to run alone, because I'm on point all day long.
Yeah.
Talking to people, having to pay attention, and so like
having to engage.
Yeah, and so when I'm out running, the last thing, one, I'm slow as heck, right? And so people who are talking and I'm out of breath, I'm like, dude, you can talk, but I can't answer.
I'm not going to respond.
I'm barely alive here. But yeah, and it's also just time for me not to have to be on point or engage. And so that's what I love about it. I do want to go back to the keto though, if we can.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I think this is important, because if I tell someone I'm in ketosis, or I'm passionate about the keto lifestyle, or it's not even a keto, it's more of a primal lifestyle, low carb, high fat. Like, the first thing you get is, you don't need to lose weight. You know, you're so skinny, you can't lose weight, right? And they almost skinny shame you, for one. And it's like, for me, it's almost never about weight loss when it's me personally. It's how good I feel when I'm eating right and not even exercising a lot. That's the other thing, is that, think about that. I was running all those miles and I still had 31 extra pounds.
That's
right?
crazy.
So you change your diet and you lose the weight. So what does that tell you? Is it your diet, or is it the exercise? I would argue it's mostly diet, right? Like, most people don't want to run off of Snickers. That's a couple hundred calories or 300 calories.
I really like Snickers.
Well, I know, but you run a lot, right? But
Yeah.
most people aren't willing to go out and run for an hour just to have a Snickers for, 30-second Snicker fix.
Right.
So,
That's a great point.
but what happened was, I was like, this is fascinating, right? And I lost all this weight. I feel amazing doing exactly what they tell me I'm not supposed to do and stay away from. And so, my lifestyle or my personality is, anything worth doing is worth overdoing.
100%.
Right?
And it's almost like you like the fun of experimenting to see what things will do, and see how your body and your mind will both react to the different things you try. Because I do the same thing. We were talking earlier. I haven't had caffeinated coffee in a month and a half, and I'm somebody who loves my coffee.
Right.
And so what I do is I call them new month resolutions, where for 30 days I'll try something different to see how it affects my body. And then it's tough because, as you're saying, and I 100% agree with you, you start figuring out something that works for you and you're having a positive result. You get people that are so set in their ways, when they haven't even seen the other side of it, and they haven't been willing to even try the other side of it, where they want to shame you for that. My brain's going 1,000 miles an hour the way it is, and then I take away the caffeine and it actually smooths me out, and I still get the taste of coffee. And like what you're saying is, you start figuring out something in the way how you're fueling your body.
Right.
And you're getting a positive result, and people are like, well, why would you do that?
Right, right. Well, and then I need to defend myself, but I'm curious.
And
I'm like,
you
how did this go? Well, I think there's that whole thing we can talk about, is when you change and make changes in your world, those around you, not because they don't love you, but because they love you, they want you to come back to them, because they don't want you to get hurt.
Yes.
Or oftentimes the opposite is, that means that they're going to have to face their reality.
Ooh, that's a great point.
Right? It's like, oh, if he changes, then I have to admit that, and he gets better and improves, I have to admit that maybe I'm not being the best that I can be also.
That's a great point. Is you're doing that, it's almost like you're unintentionally feeding them guilt.
Yeah. It's like, well, gosh, if Jake can do it, I can do it, but I don't really want to take personal responsibility, so let's bring Jake down.
Yeah, and you're not comparing yourself to the same point that somebody else is, and that's a great point.
That's why I'm really careful. Like I'll shout about how much I believe in taking care of your metabolic health, right? Like through reduction in carbs and making sure you're getting healthy fats. And I can't want it more than them. Like my coaching people, if they come in and I know that they're capable of, 3, 4, 500,000 in income, if they don't believe it, there's nothing I can do. I can't want it more than them. I'm here if they have questions. I'm here to help as many people as I can, because I believe it. I believe there's good science in it. And if they don't want to change, I still love them.
Force them to,
right?
Yeah.
Just don't force me not to change.
Yeah.
Right. And I think it comes from different things. I think the tough thing about health, and why everyone wants pharmacology or pharmaceuticals rather,
the quick fix
and different things, is because they have to admit that they're personally responsible for where they are, right? In their health. Their health is one of the things that we have 100% control of. Now, there's some genetics to it, but even those, it's a recipe. Your genes, epigenetics is something I'm studying now, is basically, which genes are turning on and off. You've got the ingredients for the perfect human body. Your habits determine how those are going to be put together and what sort of cake you're going to get, right? And so when I say that, though, 100% responsible, is it harder for some people to lose weight, harder for some people to get in shape? Yes, not as hard as they would think. And they can still do it. They just don't want to admit that it's in their control. They'd like to blame something else, or they want to take the easy route out. I'm going to take a pill. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. So, but with the keto thing, I started diving into it, and it was blown away by the research and sort of the myths that we have going on in this world that maybe weren't true. And as people started seeing the changes in me, they started seeking out help. And I just say, hey, this is what I do. You should do it. And then part of me being a coach, you know, when someone comes to me and they have the grit and the passion, like, I'm going to do what I can. Like, I love helping people, right? I get passionate about it. And then they started seeing like ridiculous results. You know, we've got a great friend. I don't think he would mind me sharing his story. But he was one of the first people that I ended up helping out and talking about that. And he ended up losing, I think it was 52 pounds in 10 months. He lost a lot of weight early on. And again, another ultra runner.
Holy shit.
He's kept it off for over 5 years now. The guy looks amazing. He's older than both of us. He's going to be doing several ultras next year.
Oh, he still runs like
right?
a goat.
That makes me happy, like joy, true joy. It's like, oh my gosh, what are the impacts of that on his family or his life, you know, his relationship? So that's when I became really, I guess, fanatical or passionate about, read everything, experimented, you know, geeked out with ketone monitors, all that stuff. And part of it was because everyone wanted to tell me I was wrong. This is bullshit, you know? And it's like, I had to learn to defend myself and defend my position. And I also had to help others defend their position.
So how would you counter somebody that says, well, look, you know, because I've been reading a lot lately about people that have gone and ran with like Ethiopian runners and Kenyan runners, the marathon runners.
Right.
So how would you counter somebody that says, well, what about people like this that are performing at, you know, world record levels and the majority of their diet is carbohydrate?
Right. I think in those situations during the runs, they are in ketosis a lot. Like, those people are typically pretty metabolically healthy, meaning we're supposed to burn fat and glycogen, you know, sugars. We're just supposed to burn primarily fat as our fuel, right? Fat, ketones. The thing about carbohydrates is it's a limited source, okay? For most of us, we've got about 2.5 hours of carbs in our system, or glycogen in our system. I'll just use it interchangeably. Most of us can't get done with a marathon in 3 hours. So we've got to have some uptake. They can burn primarily on carbs, but they're also, a lot of the studies show that they're burning fat at a pretty high rate as well. That's why they're so lean, right? But people will say, well, carbs are necessary, right? You got to have carbs to survive.
Yeah, because we've always heard that, you know, before a big race or whatever, you carb load. So you eat pizza or you eat pasta.
Yep. And I think you have to restore for intense activity. That's kind of, like, the way I look at it is your liver glycogen, your glycogen stores are like the nitrous oxide of a gas engine, let's call it, right? You put that in there and it just tears off. But if that's all you're burning through your engine, that's probably not a good thing. It's going to wear out pretty quick, right? It was designed to burn this primary fuel. And so the glycogen or the carbs, that's there for really intense needs, which those marathoners are, right? They're booking it. You need that in emergencies, but the nuance, the difference is you never have to eat another carb in your life and you can function perfectly well. Your body can create it through a process called gluconeogenesis as needed. If we had to have carbs to survive, we would have died out as humans a long, long time ago because food was scarce, right? And you've got about 24 hours without a lot of activity that you would burn through your glycogen stores and you should die, right? But you don't. And so, but what happens is if you don't have protein or fat, you will die. Those are absolutely essential to have. But carbs can be made through not carbs, but glycogen through amino acids and even some fatty acids.
So what's your day look like then with what you would normally eat?
So for me, it's as I get older, it's mostly animal proteins, like fatty meats, fatty chicken. I lather it up with butter or ghee, stuff like that. I try not to have too many vegetables just because I don't like them and I'm not convinced they're necessary, right? That's a whole different
As I say,
argument.
so what would that conversation be like with somebody who's a vegetarian or vegan?
Yeah.
That's... I
just try not to because it's it's one of those things. It's kind of like politics, Republican, conservative. There's just, I'm not going to tell someone that they shouldn't be a vegetarian if they're getting good results for it, right? And I think that's kind of the interesting thing is that I don't care what you do, right? Just don't tell me what I'm doing is wrong.
That's a good
right?
point.
Like I'm getting good results. If you want the results that I have, I can tell you how I did it. There's a lot of research out there about like how fiber is not necessary. That as a race, as humans, if you look at shows like Alone or these survival shows, no one survives unless they get meat and fat. The problem with the world now is you have to dig so deep and be willing to put in the effort to find the information, right? Like what's true, what's not true. They say this, there's, studies here and there. But to me, based on the results that I get, doing the research that I've done, the experience of learning foraging, because I spent a lot of time in the wild, and and I
wanted to get into that. We can get there, but I want to talk to you about that because I know you're a very avid fisherman.
Yeah,
and I don't know how far you go into the hunting side of things too, but I know that fishing is a huge component of your life. And didn't you have a store at one point?
Yeah, I still am, and have been a licensed fly fishing guide since the 90s, so 25 plus years, and that's just my love of nature. But when you go out in the wild, though, I've read all the books so that, I can forage out there in the wild. And almost without fail, all the wild plants, and keep in mind, what we call vegetables now didn't exist hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago. They're just so genetically modified now. But if you look at those books, like almost all of them say, limited quantities, otherwise you're going to shit yourself, or you're going to get heartburn, or you're going to die, right?
Eat too much broccoli and you're a mess.
Right. But all those plants in the wild, it's true. And it's because plants do have a lot of toxins. The theory is they can't run away like an animal, or they can't bite you, claw you, beat you. So they've got these toxins to protect them so that you don't eat too much of them, because if you ate them all, then...
See, and I'm guilty of that because I'll eat a salad and I'll fill the bowl with spinach,
right?
And and then I'll throw my toppings on top, and
right?
Meat, eggs, tomatoes, dressing, all that stuff. But I'll eat this big bowl,
right?
And I'll be miserable for the next day or two because my insides are just trash.
Yeah, and it's like people like to say that red meat rots in your gut, but ask anyone with a colostomy bag, like what screws up their bag more than anything is the fiber in the veggies, right? The meat just goes right through and gets fully dissolved. Plus, there's nothing you can't get from meat that vegetables can give you. The reverse isn't true. The protein and the types of vitamins that are in meats are the ones that we can use, our body can use, like vitamin D. I believe it's D2 in veggies that our body doesn't use at a high level. D3 in meat is really what we want, vitamin B12, stuff like that.
Do you take supplements too?
No.
Nothing?
No. My goal in life is not to take supplements. I do take some exogenous ketones once in a while. I kind of like that. But if you look at that, and if you had to survive in the wild, there's no way you can forage yourself and stay physically strong. I can't imagine a tribe of Native Americans living off of just veggies. They couldn't, right? Yeah. Now, the cool thing is, and the human resilience is, they learned how to sort of detoxify them, but they were more like survival foods. If they could, they would get buffalo, they get wild game.
Eat meat.
So, yeah. So anyways, that's just sort of my take on it. But if someone comes to me and they want to change their health and they want to eat veggies, awesome. If it's good for them, and my only caveat, if you're doing a ketogenic diet and you're going to eat veggies, the lower carb ones, and use it as a vehicle to get fat, lather them in butter, lather them in olive oil. So yeah.
Be interesting to get have you on one side, a vegan on one side, and somebody that's all about the carbs on the other, and
Yeah.
just I don't know, be a fly on the wall and listen to that conversation.
I think there's been a lot of stuff out there. Like Paul Saladino does a really good job. Sean Baker, these guys are actually one that I'm really geeking out on now is Anthony Chafee, and he's a physician, and he went to all meat, which again is really a ketogenic diet. He's in ketosis probably 90% of the time. His rugby playing and training just went off the charts when he cut out the carbs.
Really?
Yeah, he's a beast. So.
Did you follow Liver King at all?
Yeah, and yeah, we won't talk about Liver King.
Don't want to go there.
I don't want to go there. I love his principle and I love the message. I just think he made
the delivery was in.
He made some bad choices, and again, it's like
transparency and honesty.
Yeah. Well, so authenticity.
Yeah.
Right. Like if he had just been authentic, maybe it wouldn't be there. I'm doing
this on the side, and this is what the results I'm getting.
Yeah.
But yeah.
That's agree. It's also I don't blame. I tell you, one of the things that I don't do that I want to do almost is TRT, testosterone replacement therapy. Right. So many people I know my age are on it. I'll be 56 in a couple of weeks. My testosterone is still within normal ranges, right? It's not what, I was maybe when I was 20, but my goal is until I maximize my health through natural means, through the food I eat and the exercise, I don't want to do that stuff. And I know that I'm not on a consistent basis maximizing my health. I still go out and eat a dozen or 2 dozen Krispy Kreme donuts in an hour sometimes, right?
Power it down. You traded pizza for donuts?
Right, yeah. It's just, and
nobody's perfect. And I think that's the ebb and flow of it all is it's hard to be 100% of the time.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I struggle with sometimes too, is you're doing this thing and say you're trying to be consistent with it, and you fall off the wagon and you feel that, oh God, everything's just a complete mess, but that's the ebb and flow. Sometimes you're not quite as focused as you could be, and then you find your way back.
But here's something that I just thought of that I think is really important, and I would like for your audience to get out there is, what do they call that? I can't eat one donut. If I eat one, I eat 2 dozen. That's an addiction, right? Fortunately, alcohol has never been a struggle for me. I drink from time to time. I'm not shaming anyone for drinking or whatever it is. But my understanding is, alcoholics can't have one beer. They don't have that stop. And I have a pretty addictive personality. So it's
I do too.
Actually kind of surprising I didn't. Candy was obviously, but I am 100%, and many people out there are addicted to sugar.
Yeah.
Right? And so one of the things that pisses me off.
It's in everything.
It's in everything. But here's the challenge, and people don't give food addiction enough credit, and it breaks my heart. And it also breaks my heart when I see these people that are doing what they think they're supposed to be doing, and they're getting fatter and they're not getting healthy, and they've been lied to. So that's kind of why I've gone down the road I have. But if you want to quit drinking or quit drugs, you cannot drink or do drugs, but you always have to eat, right? You can't just not eat. The other thing is sugar or food is sort of socially acceptable because you have to eat. But I can't tell you how many times people tell me in moderation, oh, just eat sugar in moderation. I can't. I'm an addict. Would you tell a heroin addict, just do it in moderation?
Yeah.
Just drink in moderation.
That's a great point.
Right? So it absolutely pisses me off when people say that. It's like they can't. I can't. I wish I could. And keto, and that's the way it goes. When I'm on keto, the cravings go away. It's crazy.
Interesting.
Yeah, it goes away after a while because your body stops relying on glucose. It's like I got body fat.
It becomes your new normal.
It becomes your new normal. But man, I go off the wagon, so to speak, and that's the way I am. I can't eat one Krispy Kreme. And fortunately, I've been able to handle it. But talk to me 20 years from now. Did I do enough damage between 0 and 50 that it's going to catch up to me? I don't know.
So let me ask you a question on that. What's your relationship to change?
I'm not afraid of change, right? That's my personality is I like a good challenge. The challenge that I do have is that I get hyper focused. So like,
I do too.
It's like, okay, I want to do B.
If you do it, you're 1,000 miles an hour and you're all in.
Yeah, and then A goes away. So it's when it's changed, it's like I burn the ship. Like
Right.
the ship I'm on gets burned, and I go to this other one. So for me,
do you feel like sometimes you lose your baseline?
yeah, all the time. I think the cool thing about being a father, though, is that a couple things. One, you can't run from your problems. You can't skip town, right? You got to be there. You got to do that. You've got to start to grow up. But I mean, we talked about fly fishing. I was, again, fanatic of fly fishing. That's why I moved to Idaho.
What got you into it?
As a kid, my dad and I went fishing a lot, and I really enjoyed fishing. But I was always getting yelled at for checking, to see if my worm was still on, right? I was really, because I'm ADHD, right? I'm just fast.
I'm not catching a fish. Right? I got to see if my worm's still there.
Right. And then I'm also competitive, and my dad tells the story, funnily enough, and I didn't realize it, but I was banned from the local fishing derby for 2 years because it was, apparently I was just catching the crap out of them. And they're like, hey, maybe don't bring Graham this year.
Really?
Like, yeah.
Interesting.
So I don't know if that's true or not, but and so it was something that I was good at. And people say you have natural ability, and this is the one thing that cracks me up. I don't know that anyone has natural ability. I know that when people say, dude, you just gifted, you took up running. It's like, no, I poured my heart in it. Like, everything besides work, went away, and I was a runner. Yeah. They don't see the countless hours. When you're passionate about something, you put effort into it. You think, how can I do this better? How can I spend more time?
You learn.
Yeah, it's the classic, I think talent is overrated. There's a book out there, 10,000 hours. Mm-hmm. I can put 10,000 hours in quicker than, I know it's 10,000 hours, but some people want to do that over 10 years. I'm like, how do I do it this first year, right?
Yeah.
I want to do it in 2 years. Yeah. And so I'm also what I call an 80%er. I can get in the top 20% of anything I put my mind to quicker than most people. It's just once I hit that level of sort of mastery, an 8 out of 10, I really don't want to put in the effort to gain that extra little edge.
So when you do that and you start to master something, do you stay involved and focused on that, or do you find that once you hit that point and you're into something for a while and you're kind of finding some mastery that you almost lose the joy of it and decide to switch to something else?
That's the biggest struggle.
I find myself the same way. I go in these 2 and 3 year cycles where I'm really, really into something. Then it's like, okay, it goes back to change. I want a new challenge, so on to the next. But it's funny with running is the one thing that has stayed constant, and I've embraced it throughout my entire life just because, as we've talked about, there's just something about it where everything falls away.
Yeah. Well, and I think you get addicted to it.
100%.
There's a little bit of dopamine rush just from getting out there. There's, all kinds of endorphins and stuff. And in my world, I found it's the same thing. Like, I don't really like running. I just like not running less.
Yeah.
Right. And so it happens. And I remember when I started running, the only reason I started running is someone bet me a keg that could beat me at Roby Creek.
Really?
Yeah. We were sitting around, we were watching UFC, and I think it was the weekend before registration or whatever, and I'd say, I've always wanted to do that. And he goes, come on, let's do it. I'm like, I'm not doing it. And then all of a sudden, he had talked to Lisa, who's my former wife. She said, bet him, you can beat him. I'll take it. And so he said, Grandma, bet you I can beat you at Roby Creek. And I was like, what are we betting? He goes, keg. I'm like, I'm in, right?
And you had how much time to prepare?
I had 8-10 weeks, right?
Geez.
Never, I've been an athlete my whole life, right? Like lacrosse, hockey, soccer growing up, and,
you're an active kid.
Active kid. Anyways, ended up doing it, ran the race, trained. Again, I went out. I just went out, started running. I'd run until I was winded, then I'd walk, and I'd keep running, then I walk, and and that's how I ran all of Roby Creek. My first thing, I didn't, right? Like I just guts, and then I quit. And a friend of mine had called me and said, hey, we got a spot in Hood to Coast. He said, I see you're a runner. I was like, no, I quit. What do you mean you quit? I said, I just wanted my keg, and that was it. So for a month, I didn't run, and then I missed it. So I started running. Then, it's like hearing about guys like you running 50, 100 miles. I'm like, what? can we do that? Then you start doing the research. Yeah, we're doing. And the next thing I know, I'm, my first ultra that year, which was the Foothills Frenzy.
Mm-hmm.
It's awesome. But the point being is that you get all in it unless, and I think this is true in life, you never arrive. There's always going to be suffering. And if you don't have something to shoot for, that's a problem. So running's nice because you can go from 5K to 10K to maybe marathon or trail races or 100 miles or whatever. And when you quit running, you miss it because your body, it's such a good rush for your body.
You crave it.
Yeah. It's the same thing. I'm still running, not always as much as I want to or can. I don't know that I'll ever not run.
How much of that do you think is running, and how much of that do you think is just maybe an addiction to being outside?
Well, for me, it's all about being outside. Yeah. I would never come inside if I didn't have to. It's funny because if you see me at work, you think I'm the, most conservative, yuppie kind of dude on the planet, but I'm really a hippie. I just like...
You're a hippie in disguise.
Shorts and no shoes and out in the wild. That's what I love. That's what I live for. So, yeah, and that's what running does for me. It gets me outside, allows me to see these places. Like, no one runs 50 miles for their health. It's arguably bad for your health.
I don't have any science to back it up, but I would probably say that I would see it potentially deteriorating your body excessively. And I don't know that for a fact. I'm talking out my ass.
Well, we see it all the time. The trade-off is, though, I would add, let me clarify that. Nobody runs 50 miles for their physical health. For their mental health, some people do, and it is. And I think if you were to look at ultra runners in particular, there is a lot of, I don't want to say mental health is bad, but there's mood help that helps a lot of people with less than ideal moods.
I think there's a lot of addiction and there's a lot of mental health issues in trail and ultra running.
Yeah, and if you see... And this is the hard thing is when you see these people, they get injured and they won't allow time to heal.
Yeah.
And they run through and they cause themselves worse problems because they're addicted.
Yeah.
It's no different than smoking crack. It's bad for you. It's bad for your health. They still do it. It's like, look, you got to take 6 weeks off. And I'm as bad a culprit as any. We talked about it today. My knees tweaked. It's like, but I'm still going running.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I'm the same way.
So,
I had a surgery and right after the surgery, I was out a week later, and you're pushing it quicker than you should.
Right.
And I guess I should reframe what I was saying is I think people are attracted to trail and ultra running that have had addiction issues or mental health issues. There's something about, I think maybe it comes back to just, it's the place where you slow things down.
Yeah.
It's a place where you can have some control. It's a place where you can get lost in it and you're not thinking about those other things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would never encourage someone not to run. I think there are incredible mental health aspects. The reason I like to be able to run long miles is because it gets me out in nature to see more of nature.
Long periods of time.
You can see more than I can. I like the fact that I can go out, run 20 or 30 miles, see parts of the wild that takes people a week to do.
And most people will never see.
Right. But they got a backpack. I can go out and be back to my cooler of beer or, my campfire or whatever in half a day.
Yeah.
That's what I love about it.
And it's funny as we're talking about that, about how running these long distances for, long periods of time throughout your life can be detrimental to your health, maybe in some physical component of body breakdown, whatever. But we still do it. I still do it. I still am driven to do it. It's even though these things, it goes back to something, but your actions are a little bit different.
Well, let me ask you this. Okay, so maybe the lesser of the damages, because what would happen if you weren't running?
That would be a scary thought.
Right? Like physically, what would happen? You get fat.
Yeah.
And then you're going to suffer health issues anyways.
Mine would be the mental health side of things. Is my mental health without running would deteriorate rapidly.
So what's the trade-off? It's like, okay, that's why I say, you sort of have to choose your suffering in life, right? And I tell agents like, oh, I don't want to, ask for business from my friends or family, or I don't want to talk to strangers. It stresses me out and it's uncomfortable. It's like, okay, that's choice A. That discomfort is choice A, and where does it lead? If you're willing to do it, it can help you pay your bills. It can help them work with someone who cares about them, right? Like you could be of good service and provide good value to those you love. Suffering B is stressed about money all the time and not having enough money and not knowing how like you're going to send your kid to college. Both of them are stresses and both of them are uncomfortable. Which one is more productive?
Right.
Right.
And I'll even take it a step farther. How are you going to accomplish your goals?
Right.
You know, if you have these goals to where you want financial independence and you want, you know, these other things, is what's the trade-off? And it kind of comes back to like the finding comfort in discomfort.
Right. Well, yeah. So it's like, okay, is running, lifting weights, and I'm sort of going there. Here's the challenge. I love running so much. I don't have time for everything, and physical like strength is more important at our age.
Yeah.
And so I really struggle a little bit with that.
Do too.
But it's like, okay, is it uncomfortable to maybe be a little hungry at times or go without the donuts or to work out physically, sweat? Yes. How uncomfortable is it to be dependent on insulin or diabetic meds or have a heart attack and not be, you know, like either way, you're going to have physical pain. Take your pick.
I think that's what scares me, is the thought of what would I do if I didn't have the ability? And I think once you get to that point where you have the ability to do those things, it's hard to let go. And I think it's so hard as we get older and we see our bodies change and our abilities shift. It's extremely frustrating.
Yeah.
And it's, how do you maintain the balance? So for me with running, I quit running competitively because for me, I was losing the enjoyment in it. You know, you start having that body breakdown and your body doesn't respond the same way, and you need to incorporate more rest. But I still struggle with it because, like I told you earlier, I got back to focusing on running every day.
Right.
Your body doesn't heal as fast, but
it doesn't. And also what I've learned is in the keto, we'll call it low inflammation diet. You know, I don't want people to get caught up on that word keto, but when you eat healthy, like at 56, I feel better than in my early 40s. Like I thought 56-year-olds were like crippled, and most of them are, right? You know, they're overweight, they're having health problems. I still feel great. That's the other thing that I would love to teach people is like, look, getting old is a given. Acting old is not. Like, I hope no one ever tells me I act my age, right? And I have the saying, I want to die young at a very old age. And so a health span is the problem, probably the biggest thing that people overlook. Yeah, we live to 70, 80, I don't know, 72, 74 is the average life expectancy. People die by the time they're 45 inside. They just stop doing stuff. And it's sad. It really, and because it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah.
And I think they see, like this is what we talked, run from the norm, right? Run from that. Get away from it. The norm is put on a bunch of weight, get unhealthy, get on a bunch of meds, just sort of resign yourself to I'm getting old and I can't do what I used to do. And it's like people should not look at the average person. Well, I'm average. It's like, have you seen the average American? Do you want to be that? Right? You have a choice not to be that. Like it allows us to be complacent. Well, I'm better than Joe or John or Jim.
Right.
It's like, yeah, but that's kind of maybe not the best bar. Are you? And that's me. People ask me, why are you doing this? Why are you getting keto? You don't need to lose weight. I said, because I want to be the best I can be. And I know I'm not there yet.
Right. And I think that's the key right there, is I think we spend so much time comparing ourselves to everybody else in the age of social media, because, I mean, I'm guilty of it too. You scroll through and you're seeing highlight reels and you're comparing yourself to all these other people that have had a completely different set of life experiences to get them to that point, instead of turning around and saying, okay, and it goes back to, the run from the norm thing, is everybody's norm is a little bit different.
Right.
But it's not being afraid to embrace change. It's not being afraid to challenge yourself. It's not being afraid to say, I want to be better today than I was yesterday, or moving forward. And then what does it take to do that? What are the habits I need to adopt? And what are the goals I need to set? And I think that's where a lot of times we struggle, is it's what are the right habits for me, which I think, everybody's a little bit different. And how do I go about setting actionable goals that I can realistically achieve? And who do I align myself with to find a mentor or a coach?
Yeah. Coaches, mentors, accountability partners are awesome.
They point out the truth.
When I run with faster people, I get faster. When I decided to learn to ski, I skied with good people, right? Because I got better faster, that kind of thing. I think if everyone were authentic and just stopped treating each other, or dropped ego out of it, I guess. Yeah. I think ego is a big part of it. Mm-hmm. It has been in my world. I see it and I deal with it myself. for so much of my life, and even now, like all the behavioral assessments, that I'm extremely competitive, right? When I go out and play hockey now, or I go running, like it's hard to realize I'm never going to win a race. Like, and it's like,
because in your mind you still can,
right? And sometimes you give you an excuse. Like I did really well coming out of the gate, at Roby Creek and my first ultra. I was never in the top 10%, but I was, for my age, not even for my age. Actually, age is really tough. Like I swear, this is a funny story. I took like 4th in my age class at a race this past summer. And I was like, 4th, damn it. I need to at least get to 3rd. And I'm like, all right. So you go and you look. The other 3 in my age class were in the top 10 for the race. I'm like, I'm never going to.
You got to put it in perspective.
Yeah, that's hard. But the thing that you've got to be able to accept that to a certain extent. Like I don't want to burden people by knowledge. But for me, what ended up happening is it's okay sometimes not to be the best.
Yeah.
Nothing for me ruins a run like being in a race, right? And the worst is, I don't know, have you ever done this, is races are good because it's cold, it's dark out, I got to run. It's because my race is coming up.
Yeah.
Right? Accountability again. But we call it do not show, DNS'd, not DNF'd. Way too many races because I'm supposed to be tapering. It's beautiful outside. And I just, the night before a race, it's like, I'll go run 24, 25 miles. And it's like, that has so much more joy for me. And it's those moments where I'm like, this is what it's about. Mm-hmm. It's not about the race. Now, the race did its part because it allowed me to be able to run that far.
It gives you the target to shoot for.
Right.
Yeah.
But man, I would get no joy in that race because my name's going to be associated with a time. Throw the watches away, throw the technology away, just go out and enjoy it,
So I do want to ask some few final questions here. For one, what is one of the things that you are the most proud of in your life?
Oh man, that's a tough one. I feel like a lot of times I've never done anything great. Like there's always room for improvement. So I think as humans, we tend to focus on what's bad. I think, raising my daughter, that's one of the things I'm incredibly proud of.
It's hard to pinpoint one thing.
It's hard to pinpoint one thing.
Oh, it's good. That's a good problem to have.
Give me a second here.
Well, then let me spin this. Then I'll give you another one. What's the legacy that you want to leave behind? How do you want to be remembered?
So probably the mission I'm on now, which is, if I can just help people believe in themselves and help them realize that everyone's struggling and that age is just a number, right? That I would love to leave a legacy of that. And I'm not saying it has to be a huge footprint, but gosh, if you help 10 people and then they help 10 people and then that goes on. So for me, I think that's it. And then I'm going to leave my daughter behind and hopefully she continues to be a good human. That, right? Like all the races, all the stupid stuff that we've done, it doesn't even matter like how many ribbons you get at the end of life. It's like, I'll tell you what hell is for me and what scares me is meeting the person I could have been on my deathbed.
That scares the shit out of me
right?
too.
It's like, okay. And we talked about this today. Like I said, gosh, I wish I had taken my advice, like other people have taken my advice because we're not perfect, right? Like, it's like, oh, if I were you, I would do this. And then they do it and you forget to do it or get distracted. That's what's bringing about some change as I get older. And it's, dang, I wish I could go back in time and tell my 18-year-old self. Mm-hmm. And I think this is a good lesson. I hope people listening take this lesson to heart. Man, if I could go back and tell my 18-year-old self that, this is what I would tell him. And you sort of brought it up. So, well, why don't you start doing that now? It's like, well, that's the conclusion I came to. Don't make sure you don't get to 80 and need to come back and tell a 50-year-old self the same lessons. Right? It's like, when's the best time to plant a tree? 20 years ago.
Right.
When's the next best time? Today.
Yep.
Right? Like, oh, I wish I could go. So many people do this, myself included. You know what? I should have planted that tree 20 years ago. And yet they don't plant one today.
Yep.
And they're like, dang it. Another 20 years went by. I should have planted that tree 20 years ago. Well, plant it today.
It's exactly that. We struggle so much to take our own advice, and it's getting out of our own way and
Right.
getting past our own ego to where we realize that things don't have to be perfect. You just have to start.
It's my favorite saying, and because I think now throughout life we're always being judged and we're always being ridiculed for failures and not being perfect or not being right. And this is one of the biggest concepts I try and teach with agents I'm coaching is done is better than perfect.
Yeah.
Right. We think we have to just go out and start doing it, because what happens when you do something and it doesn't go the way you expected?
You learn. Yeah.
Right. There's never going to be perfection. Just go out and do stuff.
Yep.
Right. Like I think probably one of the biggest pieces of advice that I would give that I wish I could take, right? And I think it's a struggle is, and a coach would say, well, what's preventing you from taking it? Stop giving a shit what people think about you.
100%.
It's none of your business.
Yep.
What people think about me is none of my business. And it's probably bullshit. Or they're probably not even thinking about you.
That's what I have to remind myself of is every time you think people are thinking about you, they're not.
Yeah.
They're focused on themselves and their struggles and what they're doing. But I still think, it's taking that opportunity to hopefully put a little bit of good out there.
Yeah.
For the one, to your point, you said doing something where 10 people get something rather than trying to flood the world. Our kids, I'm a father too. And
Absolutely.
And that's one of the things I look at a lot is as I get older, I want to live by an example and live by the ideals that I've preached. And I think it's the hardest thing in the world for us to take our own advice and forget about the people that are there paying attention that we're not focused on because we're trying to change the world.
Yeah, we care about what other people think of us, and because of that, we aren't the best that we can be, and our family suffers, right? Like if you want to create wealth and you're afraid to go knock on doors or, approach people or whatever, it's like you're letting what you think people think of you prevent your family from financial security.
And then it plays into the victim mentality. I can't do it because of this. I can't do it because you can. You're living with a limiting belief.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, and that's it. The biggest mindset, 90% of life is mindset.
100%.
Like
or 90%.
Yeah. The other 10% is mindset too, right?
Yeah, right.
There's actually a good book that I've been reading, and it would be fun to do this as an experiment. I can't remember if it's Mark Hansen or David Hansen. It's The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck.
Oh, yeah, Mark. Now I'm brain farting his name.
Anyways, I haven't finished it all, and
It's a great book.
Good stuff to it.
Mark Manson.
Mark Manson, that's it, right. It's not that you don't give a fuck about anything. It's just you choose what you're going to give it about, right? And so I thought about, it would be cool is like I have a little coaster thing that says, a fuck, right? I got one of them today in my pocket to give. Do I want to waste it on this?
That's actually a great
Right?
thought
It's like,
experiment where you actually have to think of it with intention. Is this where I want to focus that fuck to give?
Absolutely. I don't know if you, and another example of where this plays out and works is if I go into a running store and I'm just looking around and I have my debit card, right? Like I'm going to find something to buy, put my debit card. But if I go there with $100 bill, I'm going to walk out of there with nothing because I don't want to spend that $100 bill. It's like, it's not real.
I don't know if you've noticed the same thing, but we don't have cash anymore.
Right.
But when I would have a bigger bill, I was less likely to spend it. But if I had ones and fives and tens, man, I would find something to spend it on because, like you're saying, I didn't care what it was. It's just I'm gonna spend 100%. This. But that bigger bill, it's like
as soon as it's broken, it's gone.
Exactly.
Like I can keep that $100 in my pocket for 2 weeks.
Yep.
I buy a $2 item and it's gone in 24 hours on stuff. But I was thinking about that, like, physically, because having it laminated, this is my fuck for the day.
Yeah.
I only get one.
That's a great idea.
Is it worth it for this?
That's
no,
a great
probably
idea.
not.
I think you should act on that.
All right.
Okay, I'm going to ask you 2 more questions.
Yeah, man.
What's one question no one has asked you that you'd really like to answer?
Oh, man. The probably, I think it goes back to the, what we talked about on the deathbed is like, are you being the best you can be? And it's like, no, I'm not. Right.
That's a hard thing to admit.
And so, and it's funny again, because by all outward looks to people, probably like I've got nothing to complain about in life. I'm not considerably overweight. I'm still healthy. I'm not on any meds.
Successful career.
I'm
nice
paying
house.
my bills, different things. But it's like, man, No, I'm not. And I think the biggest fear about that is what gives me the right to help someone with their health if I'm not being the best.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think it's like, well, Tiger Woods' golf coach is never going to beat Tiger in a PGA championship. Like, I don't want my daughter to be as good as me. I want her to be better than me. Right.
Yeah.
I think that's the one question that I ponder a lot. And I don't know how you ever get over that, though. Like, I don't think you'll ever, you never arrive.
It's focusing on the journey.
Well, I think that's one of the things that maybe I hadn't prepared enough in my world. I didn't think I was going to live this long.
I did.
We sort of have similar paths in that, and just like a little wild, the punk scene, and just, I don't know, jumping off buildings or, climbing up cliffs or whatever, that sort of thing. So, we do the best we can. And
it's almost a shock that we made it this far. And now that we are, it's like, well, God, at some point I should probably take things a little bit more seriously.
Right.
And
The best advice I've ever gotten out of Warren Buffett, and not personally, just from watching him, you would think is financial advice. It was health advice.
Really?
And he was talking about, if I said to you, tell me what car you want, make and model, year, everything, I'll give it to you tomorrow as a gift. Whatever you want. Doesn't matter. The caveat is that that's the only car you get for the rest of your life. You never get to have another car. So choose wisely, right? You're going to have to take care of it, change the oil, but that's the only car you get. He says, the good news is you're going to have more than one car. The bad news is, why aren't we treating our bodies? Because we only get one body for the rest of our lives, and we treat it like crap, right? Why would we treat a car better than our bodies?
That's a great question. The funny thing about that sticks with me with Warren Buffett is, depending on how the market is, every morning he goes to McDonald's and gets an Egg McMuffin, and the market decides whether he gets cheese on it or egg on it, and every day he also drinks one Coke.
Right.
Yeah, and he's, 90 some odd years old?
It's so funny.
So last question. Breakfast Club or Fight Club?
Fight Club.
Why?
100%. I mean, I just... not a mellow guy. I like I have this weird thing. I don't like bullies. I like justice. I'm always up for a good fight. It's just always the way I've been.
You lean into a challenge.
Yeah.
You're not one to shy away from it. It's just give it some thought and then you're diving into the fight.
Well, I mean, my fighting days are over, and we talk about getting aged, right? And it's like, I still have the mouth of a 20-year-old, but I can't back it up anymore, right? And so
that's why you got to learn to run fast.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know. Just
Fight Club.
There's no doubt.
We can
Fight
just leave
Club.
it at Fight Club.
Fight Club.
Okay, well, I appreciate you taking the time. So to wrap this up, where can people find you online? Where can they learn more about you and connect with you?
Probably the best place is Instagram. It's Life by the Graham, and Graham is Graham. So Life by the Graham. And they could email me if they want to at graham@gmackenzie.com. And it's graham@gmackenzie.com. Yeah, I'm happy to help. Like, I'm passionate about this, and I appreciate you providing this opportunity. And I'm super stoked. I love the new logo and the new brand.
Thanks, man. I appreciate all the feedback with my craziness of asking you for input on it. And any final thoughts that you would like to impart to anybody listening?
Just reiterate, done is better than perfect. Action cures everything. Catch fire with enthusiasm, and they'll come from miles to watch you burn.
Dude, that's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, man. It's a great way to end it up.
Thanks, man.
Thanks, Graham. A big thank you to my friend and guest, Graham MacKenzie, for joining me on this very first episode of the Run from the Norm podcast. And I would also like to extend my very sincere appreciation to you, the listener, for giving this podcast a chance. In an ongoing effort to improve our content and my hosting abilities, you can send comments and suggestions to me directly at runfromthenorm@gmail.com. And I also encourage you to visit our website, www.runfromthenorm.com, for updates on new podcast episodes, an online store with t-shirts, hats, and other Run From The Norm merch for sale, which goes directly to supporting this podcast, and a newsletter sign up if you'd like us to notify you when a new podcast is released. And with that, our first episode is complete. I wish you health and happiness as you continue your journey throughout the day, and I hope we have succeeded in our mission to motivate with compassion, listen without judgment, inspire with curiosity, one person at a time.
Check that mic, make sure it sound right, boy.